Hi, my name's Karen Duncan, and I'd like to talk to you today about writing objectives or aims for your lesson plans. So to do that today, we're going to talk about three different things. The first being remembering the end goal of your lesson, always keeping that in mind. The second thing we'll discuss is making sure that you include the focus of your lesson. So thinking about the skills, the language, the content that you are covering in that lesson. And the third thing we'll talk about is including dynamic language when you're writing those objectives. Alright, so the first thing is pretty simple. Just remember the end goal of your lesson. And to do that, ask yourself the question, what will my students have accomplished by the end of this lesson? And make sure you include that in your objective or your aim. You can start out by saying students will be able to. If you start your objective with that phrase, then you will always keep that end goal in mind. Alright, so the second thing I want you to think about when writing objectives for your lesson plan is the focus of your lesson. And in language classrooms, you want to think about the skills, the language, and the content that are included in your lesson. So first, the skills, and when you're teaching English, you typically teach listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Perhaps not all of them, but one or two in each lesson. And next, the language. Think about that. Are you teaching certain grammar point or some vocabulary? That should be included in your objective. And last, think about the content in your lesson. We don't teach language in a vacuum, so think about the context you're using to teach that language. Let's say you're teaching students to use the past tense. You might have them speaking or writing about a vacation they took in the past. And then you have to teach them vocabulary and ideas about vacations. That's your content for those objectives. And the third thing I want you to think about when writing your objectives or aims for your lesson is to include dynamic or descriptive language. One way to do that is to look at this image of Bloom's taxonomy. We have a pyramid that shows concrete learning at the bottom and more abstract types of learning towards the top. This image also includes a lot of different types of verbs you can use in your objectives when you're writing. So, for example, if you want to use the verb understand in one of your aims, students will be able to understand. Look at this and see if there's a better verb, more descriptive verb that you can use. Let's say instead of understand, you might use describe, report, or explain, because that's what they will actually be doing. To summarize my 3 tips for writing objectives or aims for your lesson plans, I'd like to give you an example. Students will be able to read a holiday story written in the past tense and explain the main idea in writing. So first, you can see that I'm looking to the end of the lesson, seeing what my students will be able to do. I started it out by writing that phrase, students will be able to. Second, you can see the focus of my lesson. The students will be reading and writing a little bit at the end. The language focus is the past tense, and the content focus is holidays. And last, you can see that I'm trying to use dynamic language. You could just say the students will understand the story, but in order to observe that or measure that, we want to say something like the students will explain the main idea. That is much more descriptive. So thanks a lot for watching my tips for writing objectives, and I hope you write some great objectives in the future.